I've got Mortiis with me from his home in Norway, and I want to get him on the Dan Chan show to discuss a few things that have been going on in the world of Mortiis. So you just released Spirit of Rebellion about a month back. You've come full circle from Era 1, the dungeon synth sound, through to Era 2 and 3 with electronics and industrial rock. What made you return to your dungeon synth roots? I know you do you like being used as dungeon synth? I know you might have coined that phrase. Is that right?
No, I didn't really coin that. I think that was something that came along many years later. In the 90s, what I did at one point was I started a label for a few reasons. But the name of that label was Dark Dungeon Music. I thought that was, at the time, I thought that was pretty descriptive of what I was doing. And I started that simply because I didn't trust other labels to do, you know, the cool colored vinyls and the limited editions and all that cool stuff that I want to do. I found it kind of hard to collaborate with certain labels back in those days in terms of getting that stuff out. So I did it myself.
Yeah.
I just called it, you know, Dark Dungeon Music. And I mean, I don't have any evidence of it, but it would seem natural that that's where people kind of picked up on the dungeon thing. Mm-hmm. And you know, like this. Fucking, I don't even know. I mean, a decade and a half later, I guess somebody just came up with the idea of like, oh, hey, let's call this dungeon synth.
Yeah.
I guess I saw that like 5 years ago or something like that term. And it was a bit challenging to me to accept that as something that was catchy.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, and I've said this a few times. I mean, I'm used to it now. I've accepted it. But I saw it the first time, I'm thinking, well, is there electricity in dungeons?
Yeah.
can you power up a synth?
Yeah.
My logical brain just couldn't process it. You know, like, this is a weird name for what you've chosen to call, you know, that my type of music and other stuff that came along.
What would you like? What if you could rephrase it? What would you call it?
That's hard. I don't even know. I mean, I called it Dark Dungeon Music back in the days. I think, you know, if we're going to talk about Spirit of Rebellion, which is the closest thing I've done ever to stuff I did back in the 90s. I mean, I don't even know what would I be comfortable calling it. I mean, it's just an impossible question.
Yeah.
Jazz fusion, you know. You know, it's ridiculous. You know, I don't even know. I just make fucking music, and you know, it's a cliche response. I know. I'm just having a problem with categorizing.
No, I understand. So when you're writing the dungeon synth, right? So do you have scenes in your head? Because I mean, when I first heard this album, and obviously your earlier stuff. You know, it's like music to go to battle to, isn't it? It's like film score music. You know, do you see? I could really see these songs coming alive on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. I don't. When I sat down and made it, I don't necessarily think in terms of like, well, this would work with Braveheart, that would work with Game of Thrones.
Sure.
I'm not that crazy, you know. But I do appreciate people thinking in those terms. I guess it means I did something right if people actually want to connect my music with film scores. So I think that's pretty fantastic. I mean, personally, I don't think I'm close to being good enough as a arranger or composer or music maker to actually, you know, stand up with those kind of people. But I mean, I'll take the compliment, you know.
For sure, because you're a massive Lord of the Rings fan, aren't you? A big Tolkien guy, right?
Especially back in the early days, I was really into it. I mean, that was a very big inspiration for me back in the early 90s, especially. Yeah.
So I mean, going back to it, so what made you come full circle to come back to the dungeon? You know.
Oh yeah. There's always more than one reason, you know. I guess the main reason, the kind of like catalyst for the whole thing was the Mortiis band sort of imploded in 2017. And I mean, we're still friends, but we just reached a point where we've been dealing with so much negativity and bullshit and basically just kind of living off of, you know, air and dust.
Yeah.
For so long, and just kind of gotten fucked by this guy or that guy or the other guy, you know. And it just reached a point where certain members were like, I'm fucking done.
Yeah.
And I could tell. I mean, it was, you know, the cards were pretty much on the table. I kind of had to drag it out of this one guy. I'm not going to mention names or anything, but You know, it was something we found out that the band wasn't going to continue. It was on the eve of the of a UK tour that we did with Pig, which was a cool fucking tour. I mean, Pig is a very cool band to tour with, and I have massive respect for those guys. They're old schoolers, you know. So that was great, you know. But I mean, it was kind of a downer, you know. Like, I think it was literally the day before we went to the airport and just got on the plane to start the tour that we just knew that, well, we're actually not actually. That was great grammar. We're not actually together anymore. We're not a band anymore. We're just we're doing this tour because we committed to it and we're going to stand by it. But you know,
did that affect the tour?
No, not really. I mean, I think we were pretty good at compartmentalizing the whole thing. We went out there and we did our job.
Yeah,
and we didn't think too much about it. I mean, it was in the back of my head. So it sucked, you know, but at the same time, you kind of go like, okay, let's focus on the shows, and then we'll just deal with this bullshit later on.
Yeah. Did you think? Did you think you might come back and it just sort itself out and you carry on as normal, or was it going to be that was it?
There was a definite sense of this is it right now. We can't put a band-aid on this. I mean, we're tired and we're over it. So at that point, once I got back home, I pretty much quit music, at least in my head, you know, for about 3 months. I think my wife got a little bit hopeful that the nightmare was finally over. And it was, you know, for about 3 months. And you know, but before that, I'd been kind of playing with the idea of putting the mask back on and bringing that back into Mortiis. So that was the little seed that was growing in the back of my head. And then unfortunately the thing with the band happened, you know, when, oh shit, there's no band. So it all kind of like got put a bit on ice. But then offers were starting to come in to do this Cold Contingency Festival, and which I rejected a couple of times. Then it just kind of like the offer kept increasing, and the guy he never gave up. And you know, I was thinking, well, it would be kind of interesting to go back to the 90s, just me, try this one more time without all the fucking politics and the bullshit, you know. Because I started thinking back to the early days when it was just me in my kitchen, like fucking building my little costumes and coming up with all that, you know, the early Mortiis, sort of the foundations for everything that became Mortiis later on. And nobody told me what to do. Nobody fucked around. There was no arguments. There was nothing. It was just me. And at that time, I felt like, fuck, I had it good back then. I just didn't realize it. And so I finally went, fuck it. If I can't do music, I'm just going to be this miserable kind of douchey fucking grumpy 40-something guy. Yeah. So there's enough of those out there, you know. So I'm like, I'm not going to enjoy those ranks. And I was like, I didn't even think. I just went, okay, I'll take the show and I'll just deal with everything as it comes. I didn't even know what I was going to fucking do.
Yeah.
And after that, the ball just started rolling. You know, I sat down and I made the decision that I was going to. Initially, I was just going to re-record, pretty much copy the old album Oddensmere Opera from '94, which is my second record. I was just going to. I want to re-record it just because I feel like the original is a little too floaty. I want it to be like a little tighter, a little more like on the beat and the key, so to speak. And but that quickly turned into a whole new thing, because as soon as I started re-recording that stuff, I got all these new ideas and all these new arrangements. It all started playing in my head, you know, and I had to just sort of try all that stuff out, and quickly I realized this is not really a re-recording. This is me fucking doing something, and you know, not 100% new, but like very much new. So.
And I suppose there was no expectations, there's no demands on you. You're doing it yourself, and you've got no pressures from any labels or anything at this time.
No, there was nothing like that. I mean, nobody knew what I was up to.
Exactly.
It was just me in my room here, you know, my little sort of a man cave / studio, just tinkering along, and then my family don't fucking care what I do. You know what I mean? I mean, they care, but they don't care. They're just used to me fucking shutting the door and doing whatever mysterious shit I do in here. So, you know, it's just another day in this house, you know, and So fall 2017 comes around, and then basically Spirit Rebellion is done.
With your fans, I mean, do you expect fans to cover all eras? I mean, do you expect like Era 1 fans to follow to go to an Era 3 show and vice versa, or is it something you're just not bothered about? You just go with it?
Nah, I mean, it would be unfair to expect that for someone to be into the first couple of records. I mean, obviously they would be into very atmospherical, sort of almost ambient-ish music.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
It would be unfair to expect them to rock out to The Great Deceiver. You know what I mean? And vice versa. I mean, some people come up to me and they say that they like everything, and I'm thinking they're probably a bit like me, where I just like the package and the vibe of a band or an artist.
Well, the image is so strong, so that's probably why they buy into you.
Yeah, exactly. That might be it. So they're kind of like they're sold on the whole thing, and I appreciate that very much. Other people will go like, "Hey, man, I like the stuff where your industrial rock stuff, or The Smell of Rain, or things like that." But I don't understand what you did in the '90s. And that's fine.
Yeah.
You can't expect people to just fucking sort of blindly fucking just absorb everything that you've ever done.
So do you think there was ever a time with you and the whole with Mortiis that you might have named each era under a different project name to avoid any like fan disruption or anything like that, or to any confusion, or is that something that didn't cross your mind?
It was something we discussed at one point, I guess around the Grudge period, where when I was pretty much losing the mask and all that stuff, and we were kind of contemplating maybe we should just leave Mortiis in the past and just carry on as something else, because now we're like a band, we're touring quite a lot, and it's just a whole different thing. It's just it's night and day at this point. But I don't know, it never happened, and I don't exactly know why. Probably subconsciously I was just concerned that it would just confuse people further, and it's never happened.
Yeah, sure. So the tours of late, I mean, you just returned from a tour of the States, and you now play alone on stage. Do you miss the camaraderie of the band and the aspect of a live show, or do you like to be in the one-man show now?
I like both versions of it. I mean, it took me a while to get used to being just me on stage and not sort of be the sort of crazy punk performer that I had developed into, towards the end, and which was a lot of fun. So yeah, I mean, I definitely do miss the good times with the band, because for the past few years we were just three guys, and that really worked out. We were like the three fucking not the Three Stooges, I guess, but there's three fucking guys that got along great. We almost never argued about anything, and it was just a very sort of harmonic, nice atmosphere with us. And so, and we were fucking awesome on stage, and we had a little more space, from being three to, we've been four, and I think we've been five at one point, like with just like special guests or whatever. And, all of a sudden you got no space to move. And when you're three, it's like, shit, man, this is fucking perfect. And I really fucking love that. So yeah, I totally miss that. And I mean, one day, I'm going to do my best to get back into it, but this is not the right time.
And I was just going to say that the fact that you're leaving the kind of the door slightly ajar means that one day with selective shows and tours, you might be willing to get back into that set, right?
Yeah, as long as it makes sense for everybody involved, then I am absolutely totally open to it, and I know the other guys are too. It's just a matter of like constellations of people's lives. It all has to line up and make sense. So one day, dude. Yeah.
So dare I say, could you or would you ever play a Best of All Eras tour? Could that ever happen?
All of it at the same time?
Well, just maybe like a couple of the guys go off, you stay on stage. Just to mix it. Would you think that would ever happen? Is that something you'd ever contemplate?
It would. It's a nice idea in theory. I just don't know how we can pull it off and make it cool. And the one thing morph into the other. It sounds like endless preparations.
Yeah,
and so many things that could go wrong. But I mean, if Mortiis was a much bigger band and there was much more money involved, then you could definitely. It's like a theater production where just one thing slides into the next one.
So the masked Mortiis has taken on so many different forms, and you performed many shows without it. Would you say the mask is like a cape to you?
I don't know. I mean, I don't feel that much different when I wear it. I mean, perhaps subconsciously it helps me hide away, and I can do more crazy stuff. But honestly, I don't know if that's the case. I mean, it's at this point, I put on a mask. It's part of the visual thing. It's the face of that whole Mortiis universe. So in that sense, I just consider it to be very, very important, and it carries everything.
Yeah, of course.
But as far as, I don't turn into a different person. I mean, I'm very much aware and I'm very conscious of the fact that the mask is on when I go on stage.
Yeah.
You can see that in people's eyes, the way they look at you. There's, they don't look at you like you're a normal person.
No.
They're looking at
you
you
like that?
Oh my God!
Do you like that?
That's cool. Yeah. That there's a certain suspenseful energy in that I kind of feed off of. Like, yes, I know I'm looking cool. I know it. I can see you like it. So it's a bit weird, but yeah, I definitely use that.
So the mask, is there one mask? I've got to ask this from a backstage, but is there one mask that exists, or is there like a whole wardrobe of closet full of masks?
I have a whole flight case full. At this point, there's a couple of masks. I mean, there used to be more, but I mean, they kind of have there's a timer on them as far as how long they can kind of survive and how much beating they can take.
Yeah.
Until they start cracking and just kind of like fall apart, So,
so do you have one now that's like on the mantelpiece, or the family not allow that? Where is it now?
it's back down outside in the garage somewhere. As a matter of fact,
like in the closet.
Which is like that's respectful treatment, right? For the mask, that mask's been on like 100 shows and it's in the goddamn garage.
It's in a dungeon.
It's not even a dungeon. It's just a stupid garage.
It's hilarious.
In some plastic box. I mean, it's protected, what I mean? But the time for me to actually start producing some new ones is coming close, and it means I have to actually do everything over again. I got to recast my face.
Yeah.
And build the mask actually over again. So let's see what happens. We're actually talking to a company about the same company that did the original mask. We're actually talking to them now. And they did the original mask back in 1999.
Well,
so I was able to track those guys down, the same fucking people,
really?
too.
That's great.
Yeah. So that's interesting. That's kind of cool. I'm slowly kind of like getting everybody back into the Mortiis world, that I worked with back in the 90s. So that's pretty cool. I'm talking to Sarah Diva too. So yeah,
very cool, very cool. So your lasting legacy. What era sums you up best?
As a person, I would say. A mix between The Smell of Rain and The Great Deceiver are the two albums that I think
agree
reflect me as a human being the most.
Brilliant.
That's where I really nailed myself in terms of like, okay, this is how I work. This is how my brain fucking works, and presented to you as songs.
Yeah.
Those two nailed that the best. When it comes to careers, I think that's very hard to I mean, Era 1 defined me the most. That's what people. That's probably what people. As an artist, I think that's what people will remember the most, because there's this very memorable face attached to it. And hopefully, the Spirit of Rebellion and whatever I do next, I hope I've been able to kind of return in form. I mean, I feel that I have. So, but let the people judge, I guess.
Lastly, I've got to ask this question: is Mortiis the character? Is he good or evil?
Well, he was born evil. I mean, for sure. Back in black metal days, there was nothing good about it.
No, yeah.
You
see tender moments on The Smell of Rain, though. There's tender moments.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I was thinking of 90s Mortiis now, to be honest. But I think it's just like this, in the middle, wherever way the wind blows at the time, whatever. Speaking as a human being, whatever profits me the most, that's the way I'll go, man.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much anyway for dropping by the show, and it's great speaking to you.
No
so
problem.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.